Welcome in to another episode of the Outsider Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Drew Landry, and in today's episode, we get into some political rhetoric that is asymmetrical, meaning one side gets to say something and it pays no consequence whatsoever, whereas if the other side said something like that, they'd pay a lot of circumstances and a lot of consequences for it. That's in today's episode, along with some other state and national, perhaps even local analysis for you today. Let's also note what the podcast is. You're also being able to see me through this video. All right, I shower for this. Okay, so that's good. Let's also note that this is the best politics podcast you're going to hear that's west of I-35 in the great state of Texas. If you've been listening for some time, you know that I just don't talk about Texas. I talk about things that happen at the national level. Of course, I even mentioned some things about my beautiful hometown of Jasonville, Indiana. Tip of the hat to the mighty Shakamak Lakers in whatever that they're doing. I'm not quite sure. So that's great. And with that said, I should bring out one other little disclaimer, folks. These are my opinions. These are my analysis, and they may reflect you. They may not all reflect you, and you may not agree with them all. You may agree with some. But that's what this whole conversation is about. So they're mine and mine alone, and they don't reflect anyone else's. And so they don't necessarily, you may not necessarily agree with all of them. So I just wanted to throw out that disclaimer out there, and let's get on with the whole show here. So in this episode, I wanted to spend some time discussing this whole conversation about political asymmetry. And what I mean by that is one side saying something and faces little to no consequence, either in society, culture, especially in the world of the political realm, in the world of politics. Whereas if another side said it, that would be, just an absolute game over. All right, that they'd face so many consequences, and they would never be able to recover from something like that. We're living in a day and age now to where a certain political side in America feels very emboldened. All right, the 2024 election really made those on the political right feel vindicated. All right. I mean, we're seeing some evidence of this to where they're being able to be a bit more bold. And that's one of the big things about the president's legacy, is that he's going to bring out this sense of boldness among those in the conservative movement, that they get to, say things now, and that they've always may have felt some way, but now they have this instrument, this mouthpiece, who now gets to say it with a lot of fervor and a lot of flavor and whatever else. And that was really, really seen, in that Access Hollywood tape in the 2016 election. That really should have been game over for any political candidate, but it wasn't. It wasn't. Whereas the other political candidate had a rumor about having something to do with some sort of a scandal in Benghazi, in the Middle East, in Libya, in Northern Africa, and this whole conversation about emails, that somehow was the end all be all. Whereas someone assaulting another person, well, that's okay. At least they're not. At least your last name is not Clinton, and at least you didn't get rid of 30-some thousand emails. Of course, that's I'm simplifying a lot of things here. But that's, on the surface, you could say that seems kind of like what was taking place. Okay? You dig deeper, you realize that's just the tip of the iceberg. But that is an example of the political asymmetry here, where one side was able to say those things and really survive, whereas the other side would never be able to say something like that. I want you to think for a moment, if Bill Clinton in 2000 said that, claimed that he was going to run for a third term. He goes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to run for a third term. Think about that. How upset would the Republican Party be? They've been calling him this communist and all these other types of things, these very, very things for over the last 8 years. They've been going after him over the whole Lewinsky issue, the whole all of that. I mean, they tried Whitewater. They tried, blaming the suicide of their best friend Foster on him and his wife. They've been going over every little thing possible. Paula Jones, Jennifer Flowers, all of these things to try to implicate that Clinton, did these, that he is somehow, these character issues reflect his ability to actually govern. Now, at that time, in the mid to late 90s, people were able to actually, compartmentalize and say, well, I may not be that great of a human, which doesn't sound good, but I'm actually a pretty good president. So look at me. Don't, judge me as the artist, not as a person. Look at the art, not the entire aspect of who I am. That's the whole argument that we've heard about Michael Jackson. That's the whole argument that we've heard about a whole bunch of other particular people who really aren't on the up and up and really aren't all that wonderful. So imagine, if you will, it's 1999, and Bill Clinton says, I'm in. I'm going to run for a third term, and a daggone thing y'all can do about it. Yeah, the whole right would be going crazy. They'd be saying, you're just a dictator. How dare you do that? Yada, yada, yada. Because, there's the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution that says that nobody shall be elected to serve 2 terms as president. So if you're elected twice, you can't serve anymore. You can't be elected again. All right, so it's quite clearly said there. Of course, that was done after FDR was elected to serve 4 terms. And they essentially put a term limit on presidents. The 22nd Amendment gets ratified in the early 1950s with President Truman, and ever since then, from Eisenhower on, all presidents have had a two-term limit. Okay. President Reagan wasn't all that happy about it. Maybe in 1988, imagine if Ronald Reagan said, I'm going for a third term. How up in arms would people be? I think, that may have harmed his legacy going into another 4 years at that particular age. And I think he probably wanted a third term. I think Bill Clinton wanted a third term. I think it's interesting, though, that when we talk about this, let's also remember that if Barack Obama, if he said, you know what, I'm going for a third term, I'm not really doing great with these impressions, I know, but just imagine if he said that said, you know what, in 2016, I'm going for a third term. That whole 22nd Amendment doesn't mean anything. That would have fell right into the trap that he is somehow an anti-constitutionalist, that he has been, grooming this whole thing, this, setting up this whole country for a massive revolution, this whole big change in the American political dynamic. How upset would people have been at the time? Imagine if he trolled people on that. If he would just say it, there'd be some people on the right would be incredibly upset with that. And now you have the 45th and the 47th president, Donald Trump, who makes these claims, well, I'm going to run again. I'm going to run again. Yeah, I'm going to run. And then people on his side, His group says, "Oh, that's nothing. He's joking. He knows that. He knows he can't do. He's just trolling the media." That's the thing that I hear. Trolling the media. That the media will then just run with it. Because to be fair, the president does know how to get the media riled up. Just say something outrageous, and that's a distraction for a good 24 hours. And there you have it. But the problem with this is that the president actually has people who believe this. Okay? Steve Bannon, who is no brainiac, by the way, who always looks like he's coming off a 3-day cocaine bender. I mean, just look at a picture. I mean, it looks like he just woke up and had to wipe the white stuff off of his nose. All right. I only, when you look at characters in movies, and they have it's just this ongoing gaze about them. I mean, just look at the movie Scarface towards the end of it. It's like, whoa. And that's what Steve Bannon always looks like. He's got his, I don't know if he's ever showered, but he just has this mindset that he just has this look that he has just been on a party bus with a lot of flavored white-looking party favors. That said, and he has this thing called the War Room, which I don't know. I mean, he's got a lot of people who watch it and listen to it and all that. The issue, though, is that he wants people to believe in it, and they do. And he's been saying here, Trump's going to run for a third term. And he told some journalists, people are going to have to get used to the fact that Trump will be president in 2028. There's truth to that. The election is in 2028. Trump won't leave office till January 20th of 2029. So technically, he's right. Trump will be president in 2028 because that's the last full year of his term. Last full calendar year of his term. So yes, he technically will be president at that time. What Bannon doesn't say is if his name will be on any sort of ballot. There's all these little workarounds. You got all these little loopholes to try to get Trump back into the White House. Like, for instance, they'll say, well, he can be Speaker of the House. We can elect somebody. We can elect a Republican. And Trump will be Speaker of the House. And then the Republican president will resign, the vice president will resign, and now Trump is president again. And he has to appoint someone to be vice president. Well, there you go. I mean, this is just so incredibly. I don't know. I mean, you really got to go down the rabbit hole. This is so exhausting to play whack-a-mole here. But I don't think Bannon's joking about this sort of thing. I don't think Alan Dershowitz, who for some reason keeps placating this. He keeps saying, well, there's wiggle room. Alan Dershowitz, if he truly believes that, has actually lost any sense of credibility in interpreting the Constitution. Because quite frankly, he's like the only one who believes this sort of stuff. Who has like a legal education. Like, because he said that should disqualify him from really teaching anything else to do with the Constitution. Like, that should be an automatic disqualifier. Like, gone, fired, out. But people still want to use him as some sort of a source. Like he's now credible. He's now awful. No, don't use that guy. No. But since Trump is saying this, since the president entertains this idea, and the right just kind of shakes it off, no big deal. You know, they're like Taylor Swift. They just shake it off. He's just simply, trolling you people. You guys are just so ate up. You guys have Trump derangement syndrome. You really believe this. This is the same group of people who said in 2016, don't take Trump literally. Take him seriously. So what are we supposed to do whenever he makes these outlandish claims? I'm asking the right here. Are we supposed to take him seriously now? Or are we supposed to joke, take it as a joke? See, this is what I'm getting at here. That's one point that I'm making. He can talk about this whole thing about third term stuff. House Speaker Mike Johnson said, look, we went over this. He's not being serious about it. He's just joking about it. When that was brought up to Trump on Air Force One, he had this very sad look on his face. I guess I can't run. It says it right there. I guess I can't do it. Duh. Of course you can't do it. Whoever told you that you could should be kicked in the shin 35 times. No, 47 times. There you go. What a dumb thing to say and to actually buy into. So if we're not supposed to take him if we're not supposed to take him literally, and now in this case can't take him seriously, then what are we supposed to do? Just laugh at him? I mean, this is one of the few people who in an actual meeting that is serious gets up from the table, walks over to the window and goes, wow, look at that view. Look at it. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my. Secretary of State Marco Rubio writes him a note that says, hey, let's get back on track here. Trump just read it aloud. And he goes, I mean, imagine if Joe Biden did that. Because the president has called the former president Sleepy Joe. Remember that? Kept calling him Sleepy Joe because he's old. Because because Biden's older than Trump. And somehow that made him be sleepy. The way that Biden would walk, very old and very slow and all that sort of. I don't remember. Maybe somebody can email me or put it in the comments somewhere or let me know somewhere. I don't remember Joe Biden being in a meeting where he fell asleep and it was on TV. I don't remember that. You say, well, Drew, his handlers didn't want him to do that sort of thing. Good. Why is that a problem? I would not want to be in a meeting with someone who falls asleep. You kidding me? And yet, there's Donald Trump on television who just nods off right on live TV. And they say, well, he wasn't sleeping. He was just, resting his eyes. That is the biggest load of gaslighting I ever heard. Once you pour some more, 89 ethanol on that, because that is the biggest lie about this president's character, about what this president has been able to achieve, anything. So if I want to start calling him Sleepy Don, the right's going to go nuts. How dare you call our president that? You have no respect for our president. You have no respect for the Constitution. You have no respect for the flag. You're not a patriot. How dare you say that? Yet the president wants to call people all these awful names. Sleepy Joe, Crooked Hillary, Low Energy Jeb, Little Marco, who's now, I guess, Big Marco. I don't know. Good Guy Marco, Lion Ted, all these things. Called Rex Tillerson, his very first Secretary of State, dumber than a box of rocks. These are things that this guy says that somehow he's able to get away with it. But imagine if Barack Obama said that. Imagine if he called Hillary Clinton dumber than a box of rocks. Imagine if he called John Kerry, dumber than a box of rocks. Imagine if he called Joe Biden out in public, just said, he's nothing but a big joke. Don't worry about him. Now, you know, like a lot of vice presidents and presidents, their relationship was complicated, and they really don't like each other, to be honest. Pence and Trump they're not friends. We know that. But now you have people who are now worried about 2028. J.D. Vance wants to be the next president. So, yeah, he's very much concerned about this whole 22nd Amendment stuff. Of course, he also wants to kiss the ring of Donald Trump, so he's not going to say anything about it. Vance is pretty smooth with his language, and he always likes to just, spin some sort of a lie into how it's not all that bad of a lie. I mean, this is the same guy who said, well, if it's not a true story, we'll just make it a story. Said something to that effect, which makes me just want to say that, okay, fine, then you really do have extra things to do with couches. There's a word I want to use here, but I'm not going to. Maybe he really does love couches more so than what one should. I mean, if he's going to play that game, why can't I? Why can't other people? See, this is what this is what I'm getting at. They get to say these types of things. J.D. Vance, the vice president, gets to go out there and say that the killing of Renee Good was a tragedy in her own making. Yet the defense of the 2020 election in the riot of January 6, 2021, was somehow a murder of Ashley Babbitt. I read some goofy thing from Breitbart. I do like to go into other avenues and other places and just kind of read what they have to say. And, the right has just been, especially the far right, they've been so unhinged these last 2.5 years. So unhinged that it's just eye roll worthy every time. But this one guy, I'm not going to give, John Nolte, he had a piece in Breitbart that said, he finally did it. He did the thing that I've been waiting for the right to do, was to throw the right punch and say, Ashley Babbitt didn't have an SUV. She didn't even have a gun. All she did was peacefully and patriotically, now he didn't say that, but this is what I'm getting at, march to the Capitol. No, she didn't. Now, I'm not going to get too much into this. You all know how I feel about January 6th. I wrote almost 1,000 words on this. I spent over an hour talking to you about this. I don't think I need to rehash any of that. I still fathom as to how there can be disagreement as to what that is. The objective should never be subjective. But here we are. But Ashley Babbitt was breaking and entering. Ashley Babbitt drank the Kool-Aid of the big lie about the 2020 election. Ashley Babbitt was going there to the Capitol to try to stop the certification vote, to try to stop the certification count of the Electoral College in the name of Donald Trump. And to Mr. Nolte, in his piece in Breitbart, that's okay. That's okay. I don't think that's okay. I think that's wrong. I'm always of somebody who tries to see both sides of things. Like I really am. I really do. And and I try to see what is to be said about what took place on January 6th and how to look at it from their end. It got out of hand real quick. The same could be said about what happened in Minneapolis with ICE and Renee Good. But the narrative out there that the right is saying is that she was somehow wanting to run over the officer. I've looked at this tape. I don't know. I've looked at this, 7,000 times. At least, well, I'm being exaggerated here, but I've looked at it a lot. At least 50 times. I've seen almost every angle possible. I don't understand that narrative. Whenever you look at it so many times, even whenever you see the video from the ICE officer, okay, she's not cussing at anybody. Now, her friend or her partner or whoever it is, now they're giving, she's giving ICE a rough time, but Renee Good is just saying, hey, I don't care, I'll let you through, or, that whatever that phrase was, it wasn't F-bomb filled. She wasn't flipping anybody off. She was trying to get through. She waved people through. I saw this thing. I watched it. I even saw it from the other side, that the president feels that is the idea that somehow that ICE agent was being ran over. I don't see it. I'm trying to look at it. What I could see, though, is that she could be very excited, nervous, scared that an ICE agent is trying to take over her car, her vehicle, and she's trying to get away, and that ICE agent was in the way. So, different aspects here, but whenever you take it at an actual look as to what happened, I'm having a tough time seeing how she tried to run over an ICE agent. I'm really having this sort of time. But J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, says that is a tragedy in her own making. The right gets to say that Ashley Babbitt is some sort of a patriotic hero. No. I vehemently disagree with that. But if I say what I want to say, if I say what I really think about how that is, somebody listening here will take that out of context and try to cancel me. Because the right is now full of cancel culture. I mean, they did it to Kathy Griffin. I don't necessarily like her comedy. I never have. She was on Seinfeld, and she played a really annoying character very well. I got real annoyed with her. I never really liked her comedy all that much anyway. I didn't watch her to begin with. But now, I don't know if she can get a job. I have no idea. But I know the right went after her because of something stupid that she did. Tried to cancel it. The right has been doing cancel culture now for the last 3.5 years. You say, well, Drew, the left's been doing it for some time. Sure. I don't disagree with that. There's a difference, though, in being taken out of context versus character assassination and taking advantage of a situation. There's a clear difference in that. And both sides are guilty of that. I just want to be very clear about that. But the right gets to now be the emboldened leader as to what's acceptable and what isn't. And somehow, if you have a different opinion that Ashley Babbitt's not a hero and Renee Good is not a villain, somehow you're wrong. There's the people who always talked about the First Amendment. What? Huh? Where you at, dudes? Come on. Give me a break. So here we have this whole thing about the third term stuff. They'd be losing their minds. The right would be losing its mind if Barack Obama said, I'm going to run for a third term. Right would be losing its mind even more if Bill Clinton said he was going to run for a third term. Yet Donald Trump wants to do it, and everyone's like, yeah, don't worry about that. That's no big deal. He's just joking. I don't know if that dude ever told a joke in his life. I hear people say that he's so funny. I guess. He's so funny looking. I got room to talk, you know. But those are things they're able to actually say. The left, if they say anything about that, suddenly it's, oh, no. They are so violent. The left is so violent. They're so mean-spirited. Do you know how many F-bombs that I get in my on social media from these groypers and these other right-wing people? Mainly those who, I mean, I can always tell whenever someone is going to be the most foul-mouthed person, especially on social media, because they'll describe themselves as a Christian conservative patriot in some variety of that. And then whenever you talk to them, it's F. And it's not free. So it's eye-rolling that they get away with it. They can say it. The right gets to say coded words, and they don't even get to. They don't even code it anymore. Stephen Miller, who's Deputy White House Chief of Staff for inside the president's West Wing, a key advisor, openly said he wants 3,000 deportations a day. 3,000. Huh? And he ain't talking about people who look like me. All right? He's not talking about people who come from Sweden or people who come from Canada. They get to say, with no evidence, zero evidence, that if you're an immigrant who is brown, you are somehow a violent person. Zero evidence behind that claim that they make. They just say it. You know? Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem told people to grow up about ICE. Tom Homan, who's quote-unquote the border czar. I thought the right didn't like czars. Anyway. Said that everyone needs to tone down. You need to chill out on this rhetoric about ICE. Everyone just needs to tone down the temperature. I'll start, I kind of agree that we need to tone down the rhetoric, but the left doesn't need to lead it. Troller-in-chief needs to end it. Lead by example for once. No. He doesn't know what the right thing is unless it's going to the right on something. I mean, again, right back to the political asymmetry here. Imagine if Barack Obama in 2014 said, Democratic states, I need you to gerrymander. The right would be livid. Imagine if Joe Biden in 2022 said, states, all the Democratic states need you to gerrymander right now. The right would be livid. But because Donald Trump cares nothing about the Constitution, cares nothing about rule of law, cares nothing about anything that doesn't include him, went out and said, Texas, go redraw those maps. And Greg Abbott, Governor Abbott, oh, yeah, sir, I will. Calls the legislature back. Eventually, they get it done. 5 seats. California, and now it's Pandora's box has been opened. We can't get that genie back in the bottle. But it's so funny to me that the right is okay with it. Had it been the other side, they'd be livid about it. They're the ones who say that, well, the Democrats tried to stack the 2020 census. What are you talking about? Am I the only one who was alive 6 years ago? Like, for real? Donald Trump was president in 2020. The Census Bureau sent them out electronically. Well, they sent out a little mailer, and you could go to the website or you could have used your phone for your QR code. And they set up booths. They went into they set up booths. I mean, we're in the pandemic, and they're saying, "Hey, come fill out the census at all these booths and all this stuff." And we actually had an undercounting in Texas. There was a large portion of the Texas population who didn't fill it out, and yet somehow you're trying to bring in a bunch of people to come in illegally. There's no evidence of this. There's zero evidence. You got idiot Elon Musk. I swear he's got to be the dumbest rich person I've ever known, or I've ever heard of. I don't know him, but he's got to be the dumbest rich person ever to make constant claims. And if you go on X, and that sucks because you got to do that, and you use Grok, or Grok, or whatever the heck his stupid AI is, you copy and paste, like you copy his claims and you paste it into Grok, and you say, "Is this true?" Grok will come back and fact check him and say that he's wrong. But the right gets to do it. And the media, which is supposed to be a check on those in power, have all bent the knee, especially CBS News, especially Paramount. Oh, grovel. And they did. And he gets away with it. The president gets away with it. No any sort of retribution. No nothing. This guy cannot even be asked a difficult question. This is why I give a little bit of credit to the New York Times and their 2-hour interview that they did with the president. I mean, they had to keep him focused because, I don't know, this is I take medication for adult attention deficit disorder. Okay. I don't know why the H is in there. I mean, I'm not all that hyper, whatever. I can get that way. So I take that, I take a medicine to stay focused. And it helps. I think the president needs to take 2 of these pills every single day. I've never seen anyone less focused on a task other than a very hyper 8-year-old. Okay? So no, I don't. I mean, they had to. I mean, if you read that transcript, if you listen to the audio, this man is all over the place. And yet that's a weave. They get to say that's a weave. If Joe Biden was all over the place, he'd somehow be, he's so out of his mind. This is what I'm talking about here. The right gets to make these outlandish claims without ever being checked, yet the left, if they even try it, nope. I mean, it's even right-wing radio says the most, and other right-wing media outlets, it's just not the radio, that erroneously says that the left is more violent than the right. That the political left is more violent than the right. That is, without question, false. You look over the last 15 years, you look at all the political violence that's happened, they came from the right. I mean, this whole thing about, the right's bringing out this drive, baby, drive thing. Yeah, they would know something about that. It's called Charlottesville. They know exactly about driving people over. They know about going after people in a racial way, like in South Carolina. Or in North Texas, where a guy drove from North Texas, the Dallas area, to El Paso to shoot up over 20 people in a Walmart who were all brown because he believed the president's rhetoric that they were somehow some invasion. So he was going to do it all on his own. Yeah. Then you got the shooting up in Buffalo of an African American market. This white dude just goes in there, just shoots it up, and said, "Well, Charlie Kirk, Drew. Charlie Kirk. No, no. This dude, the alleged suspect, the person who probably 99% is guilty, had no political allegiance whatsoever, and you're only getting that from unchecked sources and based on a quote from his parents." Or so, well, his friend said he's kind of leaning to the left, and no, it's false. But the right gets to say this sort of stuff, and they get away with it. There's no fact-checking on this, and it's maddening. The right gets away with this. They get to be racially, charged. They get to say this stuff. No one fights it. I mean, and then let's also remember the No King's Day. Let's remember that, okay? The No King's Day protests, where you had people across the country show up with signs say "No Kings," no whatever. What does President Trump do? Makes a fake video about how he's going to poop on them all. There's another word I want to use here, but I won't. The feces bomb. And yet, whenever he did that, the right goes, he's just kidding. It's all satire, says Speaker Mike Johnson. Vice President Vance said he's just having fun. He's just having fun, guys. That's all. I remember when, not too long ago, Joe Biden looked at a rally of Trump supporters, and he said, "All I see out there is a bunch of garbage." Oh my gosh, it's just overreaction, Biden derangement syndrome. When Hillary Clinton said half of Trump's supporters are like a basket full of whatever, It's surreal that when the left does this, there's immediate backlash. When the right does it, who cares? It's okay. It's okay. He's just kidding. He's just kidding. Don't worry about it. Whatever. All right. One other thing I wanted to mention about this was that the right gets to say that every election is denial. If they don't win, it's somehow wrong. You just look at the transcript that the president made with the New York Times. He said, well, Democrats win because they cheat. No evidence of this. He's still mad. He's still ragingly mad that he lost to Biden in 2020. And he's still mad that he can't ever concede to it. One of my favorite presidents is John Adams. And you don't have to tell me how petty somebody can be unless you read about John Adams. I get that. He didn't go to Jefferson's inauguration. All right. Andrew Johnson didn't go to Grant's inauguration. There is some historical precedence with that. But at this moment in American history, you would think that a president who's supposed to be this machismo guy, be Mr. Grown-Up, would just go to his, graciously give the power to the other side. But no, he couldn't even do that. He walks out of the White House and, does his wave and good riddance. But that's what they can get away with. The left could never do that. Imagine if Obama didn't go to Trump's inauguration. Imagine if Hillary Clinton didn't go to Trump's inauguration. Imagine if Biden didn't go to Trump's inauguration. So much hysteria would be coming from the right. So much hysteria. Now, I know what this seems like. It seems like that I'm beating up on one side and I'm, sainting the other. I can understand that. The left has its own problems too. Okay, let's just be clear about that. There has been rhetoric that has been fiery, but they are held accountable for it. My gosh. Kim Olson. Here's a case in point. Kim Olson ran for Congress in 2020. She's a former Democratic Party's candidate for Texas Agriculture Commissioner. Ran against Sid Miller in 2018. Barely lost, but lost nonetheless. She ran for party chair, lost that. She should have won, but she didn't. And then she runs for Congress. Maybe she ran in 22. I don't know. But she's a veteran. She has this long, very good record of being in the Air Force, and very, very decorated record. She was on a panel and said something about there was a fire and said, burn it all down. The right went crazy. The right went absolutely berserk. Took something out of context, which is typical for the right, and then just blew it all open. Has the left not taken something out of context and ran with it? Yeah, sure. But not to the extent to where you're just having this sense of fiery rhetoric that is now just going to just be frothing at the mouth. The right does that all the time. And yet, it's okay. The public doesn't care. Well, it's just a joke. Okay. We'll see. I don't think it's a joke. If someone tells you to not take someone literally, but then take them seriously, it's one or the other, I guess. And then whenever you do take them seriously, suddenly that's Trump derangement syndrome. Suddenly you're deranged for taking them seriously. No, I'm not deranged. Not even close. I'm critical. I'm analytical. And more often than not, I'm right. I'm correct. Not everyone likes that. I just a case in point. And I have to even tell on somebody, because I'm on Blue Sky, and I got, when the Democrats left Texas and all that, I said, look, they can leave as much as they want. Abbott's going to keep calling them back into a special session. This was this past summer. And I got called a wet blanket. Someone went out of their way to say that I was wrong and I'm some wet blanket and they expect more from me. Blah 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 blah. 3 weeks later, everything that I said that would happen happened. The Democrats came back. They locked the doors. They needed permission slips to go out. They had the vote. The Democrats lost. I think that person blocked me. I don't know. But I didn't say anything about it. But even that person had to know that what they were yelling at me about, they were wrong. And so whenever I say that when you look at criticism from the right about other things, no one really cares. They get away with it. They get people even rallying around it. That if you even try to use your First Amendment right to rally, and if someone makes an artificial video of them crapping on you, that's just fun. And if you want to utilize your First Amendment right, somehow that's going to get you arrested? No. No. It should also be mentioned here that the public opinion on ICE has been going down over the last, week or so. And I have a feeling that's going to continue to really happen. But I need to be fair. Public opinion is pretty fluid. Okay? That can change at any moment. But I just always have to roll my eyes that when the president doesn't get what he wants, he fires you. Bureau of Labor Statistics, much? Fired because he gave a bad number, bad jobs number. Put in there someone that he wanted. We didn't have a good jobs number for December, folks. Inflation wasn't cured. Okay? So you just got to roll your eyes here. I'm seeing something. You're telling me what I'm seeing is false. That is the definition of gaslighting. Now, I'm not going to make the Orwellian comparisons right now. But we're getting close. And that's my take on how there's political asymmetry. If the left said half the stuff that the right did, as fiery, as angry as Trump, and as angry as Vance, and as angry as Kristi Noem, and as angry as Hegseth, or who I call Drunk Seth, the right would be going crazy. The right would be losing their minds like January 6th. They would just be out of their minds, lunatic nuts. I just always have to think about when you go back to the Tea Party rallies in 2009 and 2010. Imagine if Obama made a video, a fake one, of him crapping on a bunch of protesters. I just want you to realize this, that when we bring this up, when the left brings this up, the right has no moral high ground. Trump is ruining all of that for you, and that should bother thinking Republicans. That should bother you. Because what's good for me now could possibly be bad for me later. That's why you're seeing some Republicans stand up to Trump when it comes to things like extending the War Powers Resolution, okay, or the Epstein files, or not getting rid of the filibuster, which the president wants. Okay, and yet there are very much fire-breathing conservatives who say things like, "Well, Obama didn't need to go to Congress when he took out Osama bin Laden." No, but he notified Congress. Nobody in Congress knew about the Maduro capture. They were just going to go in there and just take him over. I mean, that's pretty wild. And this administration, these people in it, don't want to answer any questions on accountability. They just want the political drama. Pam Bondi will never answer a question about the 2020 election. J.D. Vance will never answer anything that has anything to do with criticizing this particular administration. Drunk Seth will never say anything bad or criticizing stuff. Kash Patel or Bambi, he just looks so surprised. He looks like a deer in the headlights. Continues to fight people. Continues to use our tax money for his girlfriend's protection. You can do a search inquiry for that. And yet somehow, all those things are fine. You remember when Secretary of State under Biden couldn't be found for like a week? Like they couldn't find him? No, I'm sorry. He was the Secretary of Defense. Couldn't be found for a week. Why? Because he was in the hospital. He later apologized for that. And then we heard all the conspiracy theories. Oh, well, who knows what's going on? Oh, they're putting robots in there. He's actually a robot. I mean, all this crap that the right gets away with. The left can't. The right fights. The left folds. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I think there's one side that can actually articulate that there's a higher calling to all this, as opposed to just wanting to be right about the issue, about being correct on the issue. And as of this moment, the right just wants to fight with people. They're taking orders from one person, and that person is not the Constitution. It's not a document. It's not historical examples. It's President Trump. All right. That's about all I wanted to say here. There is a local thing that I wanted to mention before I get out of here real quick. There's this, on social media, there's this local, I guess, I call him a cartoonist, I guess, maybe. That's being generous. Like, I guess he's an AI generator. It's called Lubbock Lampoon. I shouldn't have given him that free advertisement, but all this person does is, I mean, there's a picture of this person like drawing. I mean, maybe this person is drawing them. I don't know, but it looks to me that everything is artificially, intelligently designed. I could be wrong, but this is clearly somebody who is a right winger, who has made light of serious issues, and likes to really, I mean, you can tell who this person likes and who this person doesn't like. And it's scary as to some of the people who he likes. But the drawings aren't bad. They look pretty good. I hope I don't end up on it. I don't want to be on that. No thanks. But why did I mention it? I mentioned it because this person knows his audience, and those who watch that have the idea that police are right all the time, and that all you have to do is just say, okay, you know. And look, I support the police. I'm glad we have them. But what I don't support is bad police policy. I mean, it's bad police policy for a Lubbock police officer who pled guilty to violently assaulting his girlfriend to just plead out. And he said, if you're a good boy and you pay a fine, if you're a real good boy, you can never be a cop again. You can't own a gun again. But if you're a real good boy, this will all be off your record. I don't like that. You can do a search engine inquiry about what I'm talking about. It's not cool. But the right says somehow Renee Good was wrong, but Ashley Babbitt was right. Two different pretenses. One was trying to leave the police. Another one was running right after him. Full speed ahead into a glass door after being told not to several times. Both lives were lost in a very sad situation. I want to be clear about that. But different circumstances. Okay. All right. Last thing I'll say here, I appreciate y'all listening. This will drop. Well, this has dropped, I guess. Thanks for listening in. I appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you again very, very soon.